Arthur's family truth. She walked up to the microphone at our 45th anniversary party, smiled at 200 people, and called me a parasite. I didn't move. I didn't put down my bourbon. I just stood at the back of the ballroom and watched. I pulled out my pen and signed the divorce papers right there in front of everyone. Then I leaned in close and whispered, "Your lavish lifestyle ends now." They laughed. By morning, they wouldn't be laughing anymore. My name is Adrian Calloway. I'm 64 years old. I built a freight logistics company from a $4,000 business loan and a used pickup truck in 1987. By the time I retired, Calloway Freight Solutions had 11 trucks, 34 employees, and solid contracts across Tennessee and Kentucky. Not a Fortune 500, just a real business built with real hours over 38 years. I thought I had a real marriage, too. That night at the Nashville Country Club, I found out I'd been wrong about that for a long time. Let me back up 6 months, because that's where this actually started. I came home early from lunch with Gerald Porter, my lawyer, and the closest thing I have to a best friend after 30 years of working together. Gloria didn't hear me come in through the side door. She was on the phone in the living room, not whispering, not being careful. She didn't think she needed to be. She was talking to Renee, one of her country club friends. Renee had just finalized her own divorce, walked away with half of everything, house included. And Gloria said, clear as anything, "I've wasted 45 years, Renee. At least you were smart enough to get out." I stood in that kitchen for about 10 seconds. Then I walked back out to my truck, sat in the driveway, and called Gerald before I started the engine. That phone call set everything in motion. Gloria and I got married in 1979. We had nothing, courthouse in Nashville, 2 witnesses, barbecue on Broadway afterward. We had Elliot in 1991 and Vivian in 1993. Gloria quit work to raise them, her choice, and never went back. Somewhere in those years, Gloria stopped being the woman I married and became someone I was mostly just funding. I paid for it. I kept quiet. I set up the Calloway Family Preservation Trust in 2005 when I started doing serious estate planning. In 2012, I restructured it with Gerald's help and started tracking all expenses against a set annual limit, $24,000 per person per year for reasonable living expenses. Everything above that was legally classified as a loan from the trust, not a gift. 8% annual interest, compounded quarterly. Monthly statements went to the house, 144 statements over 12 years. Gloria never opened one, not once. After I heard that phone call, Gerald and I spent 6 months going through every transaction since 2012. What we found was that the 3 of them, Gloria, Elliot, and Vivian, had run up $1,160,000 in total expenses against a combined allowance of $864,000. The overage principal was around $296,000. After 12 years of compounding interest calculated on the rolling balance, the total debt owed to the trust came to just over $420,000. They had no idea. Because they'd never read the statements, by the night of the party, I had everything documented, organized, and ready. Gerald had filed the necessary paperwork. The only thing left was the signature. So when Gloria took that microphone, I wasn't scared. I was almost relieved. She was beautiful that night. Silver dress. The diamond earrings I'd bought her for our 30th anniversary. She held the microphone the way she used to hold a room when she was confident about something steady, deliberate. She talked about sacrifice, about giving up her career to raise our children, about standing beside a man who cared more about spreadsheets than his own family, about finally reclaiming her life. Then she reached into her clutch and pulled out a thick envelope, divorce papers. She held them up like a banner. I looked across the room at Elliot and Vivian sitting at their table near the front. Elliot, 33 years old, who hadn't held a real job in 4 years. Vivian, 31, who called her Instagram account a business. They were both grinning. Elliot started clapping. Behind Gloria, Dennis Wakefield stepped forward. My former business partner, the one I'd let go in 2016 after I caught him skimming vendor payments. Apparently he and Gloria had been in touch. He was smiling like he'd already won something. Gloria walked toward me with the papers outstretched. I pulled out my pen, found the signature line, signed my name, Adrian Edward Calloway, in clean, even strokes. Then I leaned in close enough that only she could hear me. "Congratulations, Gloria. Your lavish lifestyle ends now," she blinked. A small, confused smile, like I'd told a joke she didn't get yet. I straightened up, handed my wallet and credit cards to Elliot, who grabbed them without hesitation, nodded once, and walked out of the Nashville Country Club into the warm Tennessee night. They laughed behind me. That was fine. By morning, they'd understand. I drove straight to the airport that night. Gerald had booked me a one-way to Austin 2 days earlier. I had a condo there, a 2-bedroom on the 4th floor of a building off South Congress Avenue that I'd bought outright 3 years ago and paid cash for. Gloria didn't know it existed. It wasn't hidden, I just never mentioned it, and she never asked where I went when I said I had business in Texas. I landed just before midnight, picked up my key from the lockbox, and poured a glass of water in a kitchen that had never once been argued in. I sat by the window and watched the Austin skyline and waited for morning. I didn't have to wait long. At 6:47 a.m., the first repo crew pulled into the driveway of our Brentwood house. I was watching on my laptop. I'd installed a security camera system 5 years back, full cloud storage, 8 angles. Gloria had never paid much attention to it. The driver stepped out, checked his clipboard, walked to the front door. Elliot answered in a bathrobe. You could see the confusion on his face from the driveway camera. The driver pointed to Gloria's Lexus. Elliot started gesturing, waving his arms. The driver walked back to the truck, didn't respond, and had the Lexus loaded and chained down in under 10 minutes. Elliot was still standing in the driveway when the second truck arrived for his BMW. By the time the third truck came for Vivian's Audi, Gloria was outside too, still in the silver dress from the night before, barefoot on the gravel driveway, screaming at a driver who had a job to do and zero interest in being screamed at. I zoomed in on her face. She was crying, mascara down both cheeks. I watched for a moment. Then I closed the camera feed and made coffee. At 9:15, the catering company sent a rep to the house to collect payment for the previous night's event, $6,800. Elliot tried the American Express card I'd handed him the night before. Declined. He tried it again. Declined. Gloria tried her own card. Declined. She tried 2 more. Same result. Every card tied to the trust had been deactivated at midnight. The catering rep left. I know what he said before he went, because Gerald had scripted it. I'll be filing a collections notice by end of business. At 10:30, a sheriff's deputy pulled up and served the eviction notice. The Brentwood house was trust property. Occupants had 48 hours to vacate. The deputy didn't explain it further. He just handed Elliot the document and drove away like it was a routine Tuesday. Gloria called Gerald at 10:45. He answered on the 3rd ring and told her exactly what I'd instructed him to say. The house belongs to the trust. I'm the sole trustee. I've exercised my right to terminate their occupancy, all legal, all documented, all final. Then Gloria called Dennis Wakefield. I know because Gerald's contact was monitoring the line still in my name, still on my account. The call lasted 38 seconds. Gloria's voice was shaking. Dennis, I need you. Everything's falling apart. There was background noise on his end, a woman laughing, not Gloria. Dennis said it wasn't a good time and ended the call. She tried again 20 minutes later. He didn't pick up. Gerald sent me a text, Wakefield's out. He called me this morning asking if Gloria has any assets in her own name. I told him the truth by 2 p.m. The next day, they were loading suitcases into Howard Pierce's Honda Accord, Howard being Vivian's husband, the only one whose car wasn't in the trust. 5 people in a 4-door sedan. They checked into the Riverside Motor Inn off Murfreesboro Pike. $54 a night. I looked it up, 1.6 stars. Reviews mentioned thin walls and a vending machine that ate quarters. I finished my coffee and went for a walk. The courtroom part I'll keep straightforward because it wasn't dramatic. It was just facts sitting in a room until a judge read them out loud. Gloria hired Eugene Hollins, an $800 an hour Nashville divorce attorney who filed a motion accusing me of hiding assets in shell companies and offshore accounts. Gerald showed up to the hearing with 3 bankers' boxes of receipts, a USB drive containing 144 monthly trust statements, and a spreadsheet that broke down every dollar spent by every family member since 2012. The spreadsheet went up on the courtroom monitor. Gloria's spending over 12 years, $487,000. Fashion, spa treatments, country club memberships, home renovations, a $16,400 year in spa visits alone. Elliot's $391,000 mostly failed business ventures and leased vehicles. Vivian's $282,000 equipment she rarely used, travel, wardrobe, total. $4,160,000 against a combined allowance of $864,000 principal overage, $296,000. After 12 years of compounding interest on the rolling balance, $420,000 owed to the trust. Judge Audrey Holloway looked at the monitor, then looked at Eugene Hollins, and asked him whether he'd been aware his client had spent over $16,000 on spa services in a single calendar year. Hollins said he hadn't been fully briefed on the specifics. The judge let that sit in the air for a moment. Then she denied the motion for forensic accounting. The trust structure was legally sound. The prenuptial agreement signed in 1980 was enforceable. The assets belonged to the trust, not to either party individually. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Gloria received nothing she had been counting on. After the final hearing, I walked out of the courthouse into the Nashville afternoon and called Gerald. He picked up on the first ring. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like it's finally over." I said the first part anyway because it wasn't over. "Not yet." Elliot still had one move left and he was about to make it. I found out about Elliot's plan the same way I found out about most things, because he used a phone I still owned. 2 years back, I'd upgraded my cell and offered him the old one when he mentioned his screen was cracked. He took it without asking questions. Never occurred to him to check whether location tracking was still active or whether the carrier account was still in my name. It was Gerald's contact pulled a 40-minute audio recording from the device, captured one afternoon at the Riverside Motor Inn. The first 20 minutes were nothing. Elliot ordering food, Vivian in the background, then the room got quieter and Beverly, Elliot's girlfriend, started talking in a low voice. She said she remembered the security code to the Brentwood house. Gloria used to give it to her when she traveled, asked her to check on things. Beverly said it out loud on the recording. 4729, Elliot's birthday, April 7th, 1991. Elliot went quiet for a moment, then he said, "If he won't give us what's ours, we'll take it." I stopped the recording, sat still for about 30 seconds. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the Brentwood security system. Cameras active, motion sensors armed. Silent alarm linked to my phone and the local precinct. I didn't warn them. I didn't call Gloria. I just made sure everything was ready and went to bed. The alert came through at 2:14 a.m. I was up before the second buzz. Opened the camera feed on my laptop and watched two figures in dark hoodies move through the front foyer with flashlights. Even with the hoods, I knew it was Elliot and Beverly. They moved straight to my home office at the back of the house, pushed aside the bookshelf, and found the safe bolted to the floor, a steel box about 3 feet tall with a digital combination lock. Elliot knelt down and tried the code. Wrong. Tried again. Wrong. Beverly pulled a hammer from her bag and held it up. Elliot hesitated. I watched him kneel there in the dark, flashlight in one hand, hammer in the other, deciding. Then he swung. I picked up my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. I gave them the address, told them I had 2 intruders on camera attempting to break into a bolted safe, that I was monitoring remotely from Austin, and that I was not on the premises. The dispatcher said units were 4 minutes out and asked me to stay on the line. On the camera feed, Elliot swung the hammer twice more. The third hit shattered the keypad casing and threw sparks. He dropped the hammer and shook his hand. I'd had a secondary deterrent installed in the safe 2 years earlier, a low-voltage charge that activates if the keypad is physically damaged, not dangerous. Just enough to remind someone they've made a bad decision. Beverly grabbed his arm and pointed toward the back door. They ran, but the officers were already there. I watched from the laptop as Elliot and Beverly came out the back with their hands going up, flashlight still in Beverly's hand, and within 60 seconds they were both turned around with their wrists secured, being walked out to the driveway in the blue and red light. I told the dispatcher I wanted to press full charges. She said an officer would contact me in the morning for a statement. I closed the laptop. The condo was quiet. Outside, Austin was doing what Austin does at 2 a.m., still moving, still lit up, completely indifferent to what had just happened in a suburb of Nashville. My phone rang at 4:07 a.m., county jail number. I answered. Elliot's voice came through thin and cracked. He said he was sorry before I could speak. Said he didn't mean for it to go that far. Said he knew it was wrong the moment Beverly mentioned it, but he didn't stop it. I waited until he finished. Then I said, "What you did tonight wasn't a mistake, Elliot. A mistake is forgetting to lock a door. You drove across town at 2 in the morning with a hammer. That's a choice." He didn't say anything. "Get a lawyer," I told him. Then I hung up and blocked the number. Residential burglary, Class B felony. Attempted grand larceny, Class D bail set at $50,000. Gloria posted it by calling in a favor. Under the trust terms I'd written in 2005 and updated in 2019, any beneficiary convicted of a felony is permanently disqualified from future distributions. Even a plea deal down to a lesser charge wouldn't fully protect him from that clause. Gerald confirmed it the next morning over the phone, calm as ever. One down, Beverly filed for divorce from Elliot and began cooperating with the DA's office by the end of that week. 3 weeks after the trial ended, Gloria called Gerald and asked to meet. She said she wanted to see the full picture, all the numbers, everything she hadn't read. Gerald told her 2 p.m., his office in Brentwood, and that Elliot and Vivian were welcome to come too. They came, all 3 of them. Gerald walked them through the spreadsheet, line by line, category by category. He showed them the 144 statements that had been mailed to the house over 12 years. He showed them the debt total, $420,000, including interest. He showed them what a civil judgment for that amount would look like, wage garnishment, asset seizure, a bankruptcy record that would follow them for a decade. Then he told them there was another option, a voluntary one. Gloria asked what it was. Gerald said they'd have to come to Austin to hear it. I wanted to explain it myself. In person, they showed up at my condo 2 days later. Gloria, Elliot, Vivian. Gloria was carrying red roses wrapped in cellophane. I knew before they knocked that the roses weren't an apology, they were a strategy. I let them in without a word. They walked through the front door and stopped. The condo was nothing flashy, clean lines, good furniture, a wall of windows looking out over South Congress. But it was mine, fully, quietly, completely mine. Gloria looked around the living room the way she used to look at other people's houses, calculating, assessing. Vivian glanced past me like she was checking the square footage. Elliot stared at the floor. Gloria set the roses on the coffee table and said she wanted to apologize, that she'd been unfair, that she'd let things go too far. Her voice was steady and rehearsed, the same tone she used when she wanted something at a dinner party. I let her finish, then I said, "You called Gerald for my address 90 minutes after the judge adjourned. You showed up with roses and a script. I'm not interested in the performance, Gloria. If you want to talk, we'll talk about the numbers." Elliot shifted in his chair. Vivian looked at her mother. Gerald opened his laptop on the coffee table and walked them through it one more time. Every line, Gloria's $487,000 over 12 years, Elliot's $391,000. Vivian's $282,000, the $296,000 in principal overage, the $420,000 total with compounded interest. He showed them what the civil judgment would look like filed in Davidson County. Garnished wages, frozen accounts, a public bankruptcy filing with their names on it. Then he put 3 contracts on the table. He called it the Callaway Family Redemption Agreement, voluntary enrollment. 15% wage garnishment per paycheck, applied directly to the debt balance. Complete 24 continuous months of employment and 50% of the debt is forgiven. Complete 60 months and the entire balance is cleared. Miss 3 consecutive pay periods and the civil suit files automatically. Gloria asked what the jobs were. Gerald read from the contracts without looking up. Gloria, stock associate at a wholesale warehouse in Antioch, $17 an hour. Vivian, customer service representative at a call center in Nashville, $16 an hour. Elliot, line cook at a restaurant in Brentwood pending resolution of his criminal matter, $18 an hour. Gloria laughed. Not a real laugh, the sharp kind people use when they don't know what else to do. She said this was humiliating, that I was doing this to punish her. I told her I wasn't punishing anyone. I told her the debt was real whether she signed or not, and the only question was whether she wanted 5 years of honest work with a clean ending or a bankruptcy filing with her name in the public record. I told her I'd give her 10 minutes to decide. She picked up the pen at the 8-minute mark. Vivian signed next, quietly. Elliot signed last. His hand was steady. When he set the pen down, he looked up at me and said, "I'm sorry, Dad, not for the cameras. I mean it." I looked at him for a moment. Then I nodded once. That was enough for now. They left without the roses. I met Lorraine Reed about 3 weeks later at a Veterans Business Network dinner in Nashville, a group I'd been part of for years, mostly self-made business owners who'd built something from scratch and wanted to give something back. Lorraine was presenting that evening. Former civil engineer, had run her own infrastructure consulting firm for 19 years before selling it. Widowed 4 years earlier. She talked about rebuilding after a plan falls apart, not in a motivational poster way, just plainly the way someone talks when they've actually done it. Afterward, I introduced myself. We ended up talking for 2 hours over bad coffee in a conference room. She asked direct questions and didn't fill silences with small talk. I told her more than I expected to. She didn't offer sympathy. She just listened and then said something that stayed with me. The hardest part isn't starting over. It's forgiving yourself for waiting so long to start. We've been spending time together since. No rush about it. Just two people who've earned the right to be honest with each other. 5 months after the anniversary party, Gerald sent me the first full compliance report. All three of them still employed, 0 missed shifts across the board. Gloria had been promoted to assistant manager trainee at the warehouse after 10 weeks. Her store manager wrote that she'd improved team efficiency and organized a fundraiser for a coworker whose daughter needed emergency dental surgery, contributed $50 from her own wages. I read that twice. Vivian's customer satisfaction score was in the top 5% of her call center team. She'd enrolled in an evening accounting course at Nashville State, paying for it herself through a wage deduction plan. Elliot had been recommended by his head chef for a supervisor training program. He rode a bicycle to work 4 miles each way, rain or shine. His manager described him as quiet, reliable, and focused. He'd lost weight. He looked, from the one photo Gerald's contacts sent, like someone who was sleeping better. I sat with that report for a while. I didn't feel like I'd won something. I felt like something that had been off balance for decades had finally found level ground. That's a different thing. Last month, Lorraine and I drove up to a cabin outside Waynesboro, Virginia Blue Ridge country, the kind of place where the mornings are cold and quiet and the tree line goes orange and gold in October. We stayed 4 days, no agenda. I drank coffee on the porch every morning and watched the ridge come out of the fog and thought about very little. One evening she asked me if I missed the old life. I thought about it honestly. The answer was no. I missed the idea of what it could have been, me and Gloria back in 1980. Standing outside that Nashville courthouse, two people who meant everything they said. But the life itself, the decades of silence and spending and pretending everything was fine? No, I don't miss a single day of it. I spent 45 years building something. I worked when I was tired. I paid when it hurt. I kept quiet when I should have spoken. And the one lesson I forgot to pass down, the only one that ever mattered, was that what you earn is yours, and what someone hands you without asking anything in return is a debt with no due date. My kids are learning that now, later than they should have, at a cost none of us would have chosen, but they're learning it. Don't do what I did. Don't wait until the damage is done to have the honest conversation. Say the hard thing while the stakes are still small enough that everyone walks away intact. I waited too long, but we're all still here. That's the part I hold on to. I didn't destroy my family. I just finally stopped pretending that handing someone money was the same as raising them right. Freedom isn't something you find after the fight is over. It's what's been waiting for you the whole time you were too busy holding everything together to notice. If this story hit close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.